to the Creative Collision Podcast. This is Saeed here. I'm doing a solo podcast for this episode. I'm going to be talking about the top 50 greatest rappers of all time list that I made for our Creative Collision page on Instagram, and kind of compare it to the list that went trending on Twitter the other day. Let me pull that up as well. Pretty interesting. That list was by was it the Brew podcast, I believe. They posted a list of the top 50 greatest rappers of all time. It was about a couple days ago, and for some reason the list went viral, which is kind of interesting because I see greatest rappers list of all time all the time. You know, I see these lists, and for some reason this one went viral. You know, and they're not even that big of a Twitter page, which is, you know, kind of random that their list went viral on Twitter, and it was trending for a couple of days. So actually, I shouldn't say viral. I've been saying it went viral. It's not it wasn't a video. But it was trending. The topic of the top 50 greatest rappers of all time was trending on Twitter because of this list that they made. And I think the reason why this list went trending, it was because of some of the names, not so much the names that they had on here, but like where they were replaced. Like the biggest one was having Joe Budden at number 3, you know. And I mean, Joe Budden is not whack. Joe Budden is, you know, he's actually really good, but like to have him number 3, like they kind of went like, you know, with the typical names at the top, you know, like Jay-Z, Nas, and then Joe Budden at 3. Like, okay, that's interesting, right? And then they had Styles P at 4, which another thing where, like, you know, Styles P's he's really dope as well, but, you know, have him number 4 was kind of interesting. And then they had no Black Dot at 5, nothing wrong with that. Fabulous at 6, that was another one that people were kind of surprised by, and again, Fabulous isn't whack or anything like that, but I think that's why this list why this list was trending, because of where they had some of these names on their list. If you go down the list, it's also like the placement of them, right? Like they had Eminem on the list, but Eminem was number 28, and you know, I'm not even that big of an Eminem fan, but to deny Eminem is one of the GOATs is pretty like disrespectful. So to have him at 28, that was pretty ridiculous. So, you know, it's just where these names were placed. Another one was having Tupac all the way down at 15. That was another one where, you know, people are like, you know, we're not too happy about. So it was an interesting list, and they got some interesting names on here. Nobody that I would say is whack, but just where they were placed on the list is what was you know, very surprising. And what I think that's why it got so much attention. So what happened was, you know, the Brew podcast made their list, top 50 greatest rappers of all time. They posted it on Twitter. For some reason, it grabbed a lot of people's attention, and I think just because of where certain names were placed on the list. And Twitter is random, man. Like, random things can go viral on Twitter. Like, you know, so for some reason, you know, like I mentioned, I see people put top 10 greatest rappers list of all time, top 10, 50, top 50 lists of all time. I've seen so many lists. I've seen lists worse than this one, for example. But they never, you know, went trending like the way like this one did. I don't know if it was just good timing on their part as to why it went trending, but it did. And in the response, a lot of people, even like rappers, started making their own list. Like people that were, you know, in the game, you know, started making their own list, and everybody had their own response and started creating their own list. And of course, like, we have a podcast, we're trying to get viewers, and so, and I'm a hip hop head, right? Like, I love hip hop, I live and breathe it. So I'm gonna make my own list. Like, screw it, I'll make my own list. I'll hop on this bandwagon. I see where everybody else is doing. Let me hop on this wave and create my own list and see what people say. So I ended up doing that. I made my own top 50 list. It took me about 5 to 10 minutes to make it. It was it was actually harder than I thought it would be. The first 5 to 10 names were actually pretty easy, but after you get out of that top 10, it gets pretty hard to rank the list. And I posted my list on Instagram, on our Instagram Creative Collision page. Follow it, check it out if you haven't already. So I posted the list on our Creative Collision page on Instagram, and I compared it to the Brew Podcast list on Twitter. And we got, I got some good interaction. People left comments about what they liked about the list or what problems they had. For the most part, people had problems with where they didn't have a problem with who was on the list, but where they were ranked. And that's the biggest thing I want to talk about when it comes to these lists. The biggest complaints I saw was it wasn't who was on it, just who, if somebody was ranked higher than this person, and they felt that person was better, then they had a problem with it. So that's where I saw the biggest complaints when it came to these lists, not just with my list, but other people's lists that they're posted. Like, again, with the Joe Budden being number 3, I don't think anybody has a problem with having Joe Budden in the top 50. I don't think that would piss anybody off, but to have him number 3 is what pissed people off, right? And that's the biggest takeaway I saw. Now, again, number 3 is, you're talking about like the goats of the goats when you get into the top 5, right? But then there's people complaining about somebody that would somebody ranked number 22 that was ahead of somebody that was ranked 38, and that's what I want to mention. Like, once you get out of that top 10 range, it gets really hard to group these people. Like, the person that I don't even know who's ranked number 22 yet. I'm gonna go back and check who I put number 22. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But the person that I put at number 22, I'm not saying that person is that much better than the person that I ranked at 38, right? For example, like I'm gonna look back and I'll double check who I had ranked at 38 as well. But once you get out of that top 10, however you have them ranked or listed, in your top 50, that's fine as long as they're on the list. And that's where the people were complaining about. Like, there's so many great rappers, there's so many great MCs, whatever you want to call it. Like, there's a lot of great lyricists, there's a lot of great MCs, storytellers, guys that have bars, guys that have excuse me, double entendres, all that stuff. Like, what's your preference, right? What do you like more when it comes to lyricism? But there's so many great talented artists that it's impossible to have a like super accurate list of who's better than who, especially once you get out of that initial top 5 to 10. Because I think for the most part, the top 5, 10 people are generally all the same names that most people have on their list if you're a hip-hop head. And the reason they would be in the top 5, 10 is because of their impact and their influence. So like, when you look at like top 10 range, you're gonna see the same names for the most part. You're gonna see Jay-Z, Nas, Biggie, Pac, Eminem, Andre 3000, like Rakim, hopefully, if you're a real hip-hop head. So those names are all going to be in that top 10, almost everybody's top 10, right? So that's not the hard part. Making the top 10 actually wasn't the hard part when I started making my list. It's the names after that and how you want to rank them. And that's when people started complaining. So what I'm gonna do on this podcast is I'm gonna go into like uh, my criteria for making this list, but because my list wasn't like my personal favorites. If it was my personal favorites, it'd be way different. I just went off like try to make an unbiased kind of grouping everything together, getting like who has from the impact influence. I think that's a big part of it. Their longevity, classic albums, years in the game, lyricism. That's always a part of it. Storytelling. I grouped all this stuff together and try to make this list. So what I'm gonna do is kind of go over for the people that especially like were complaining on some of the comments in our on our Instagram page, like why do you have this person ahead of that person, and how can you say this person is better than that person? I'm gonna go into how I came about my list and why the actual ranking, shouldn't be that big of a deal. You know what I mean? So now I'm gonna kind of compare it to the Brew podcast list that went trending on Twitter. So let's go through my list real quick. I'm gonna go through the top 5 pretty quickly. So number 1 I had Jay-Z, number 2 I had Nas, number 3 Biggie, number 4 Tupac, number 5 Rakim. Now my top 5 was very easy to make, and the reason being I think I think the top 5 or the top 10 I should say should be the guys that had the biggest impact in hip hop, the guys who have had the most influence and have had the longevity and had like the classics, guys that are just like Mount Rushmore status, right? Like, so when I go through my top 5 real quick, Jay number 1. I think at this point, I think it's the easiest argument to make. Jay-Z number 1. I don't think, and on most people's list that I saw, who had who created their own list in response, a lot of people had Jay-Z number 1. Like, probably more than not, he was listed number 1 compared to any other rapper for the most part. And at this point, that's an easy argument to make for Jay number 1. He definitely has the longevity, right? Like, he's been doing this for over 20 years now. Not only that, he's been doing it at a high level for 20 years, right? Like, it's kind of crazy. Like he can still, drop an album tomorrow and people are gonna rush to go listen to it, right? He still had that type of impact on the game today. Like his What's Free verse off Meek Mill's last album, like that shit was incredible. Like everybody, it blew up all over the internet. Everybody was talking about it. Like he had that kind of power, and to be over 20 years in and still have that kind of power, spit those kind of verses, can still lyrically crush a song when he wants to, can still make a hit when he needs to. Like, Jay is like the guy, right? So I don't think it's a hard argument to put Jay at the top. Like, it's obviously his influence and impact on rappers that came after him is like, out of this world. I think the only person that you can say it has a bigger impact at this point, who has had a bigger influence on his peers and just on hip hop, is probably like maybe Tupac, as far as just overall impact. I think at this point Jay's done more than anybody else, so he's the easy argument for number 1. But again, like when it comes to this like top 5 part, as long as Jay's up there, then it's fine, right? He doesn't have to be number 1 on everybody's list, but at this point, he's it's undeniable. You can tell, like, not being in the top 5 is undeniable. He's at least top 5 in everybody's list at this point. Then Nas on number 2 is another kind of easy choice to make now. With some people, they don't have Nas as high, but Nas it's kind of similar to Jay. Been doing this for Nas has been doing this for 25 years now, like, or more, right? Like, Illmatic was 94. Had one of the probably the greatest debut album of all time with Illmatic. An album that is one of the most influential hip hop albums ever made. It was the first hip hop album of that magnitude to have producers from multiple producers from different. All the beats were made by different people for the most part. It wasn't before Illmatic. It was a producer and a rapper. Like, you had one guy that would make all the beats for the album and one guy rapping. Right, you never had this way now where you're working with different beat makers and different producers on your album. Illmatic had DJ Premier, Q-Tip, Lawrence Professor. I'm missing I'm missing somebody else. Pete Rock. So like at that time, those were all the greatest producers in New York working on this album. So off Illmatic alone, Nas was like already like top 10 all time just off of that one album, right? And then I know people kind of crap on his discography after that, but Illmatic would set the bar so high that Nas could never really catch it. But It Was Written is a classic to me. Like, I Am was good. Nostradamus is, no one wants to talk about Nostradamus, but it is what it is. It's Stillmatic rebirths his career. That beef with Jay-Z rebirths his career. Ether is now a term, right? Like he kind of births a term like ether. You got ethered, right? That's a saying now. Like that, so it shows his impact on the game. And still, right? Nas is still making music. Lost Tapes 2 just came out. So he's still making projects. He had the project with Kanye a year ago, the Nasir album. So he's, I think Jay surpassed Nas because of his impact. I think Jay's been consistently better for a longer period of time now. So that's why I think that's why I have Jay ahead of Nas, because Jay hasn't fell off quite as much as Nas, like as far as his just overall impact on the game. And 444 from Jay, you can argue is a classic. So but still, Nas is up there. I had him number 2. Biggie number 3. Again, Biggie doesn't have the longevity as other artists, but all it took Biggie was 4 years to have the impact that he had. So with Biggie, it's hard to deny him or take him out of that top 5, just because of his impact and influence alone. Like, Biggie inspired so many rappers after him. He might have only been alive to make 2 albums, but they're both classics, right? And to have 2 classic albums, that's still better than 90% of rappers' discography just off of 2 albums, right? So he has the classics. He doesn't have the longevity, but he has the classics. He had everything. It's when it comes to the MC, he had the flow, he had the lyrics, the storytelling ability. Like, he had it all in the entire package. He had the impact and influence that's undeniable. He inspired a lot of rappers that came after him. So Biggie, you still see Biggie up there all the time, right? So and then Tupac at number 4. So Pac. With Pac, you have probably the most impactful, influential rapper of all time. So, I mean, what more can I say about Pac for the most part, right? Like, obviously, everybody knows who Tupac is. When it comes to one thing I want to bring up about Pac, he was the one that got a little disrespected on that on the Brew podcast list. They had Pac at number 15. Yeah, I know that pissed some people off. And I think, excuse me, we had a cookie downstairs, and cooking chili is starting to get upstairs, so coughing a little bit. Hot 97 made a response list. Peter Rosenberg and Ebro made their own top 50 list, and even them, they were disrespecting Pac. Um, I think Rosenberg put Pac at like number 19, and then Ebro had him like number 9 or something. But he had like J. Cole ahead of Tupac. Come on, man, how you gonna put J. Cole ahead of Tupac? Like, and but obviously J. Cole's. I had J. Cole in my top 50. I think I had him 40. I forgot, like 47 or something like that. And he still had the chance to go up on that. But to put J. Cole ahead of Tupac already, like, come on. So I've been seeing that lately, man. I've been seeing people disrespect Pac lately. Like, Pac inspired J. Cole. Pac, like, J. Cole's one of his biggest influences is Tupac. Kendrick Lamar as well. And I think Kendrick's a lot closer to Pac than J. Cole is when it comes to all time status. But still, like, Tupac inspires somebody like Kendrick Lamar. One of his biggest influences is Pac. I know the complaints against Pac is that he wasn't like the best lyricist. He wasn't like spitting bars like that. He was really straightforward, but a lot of times that's all you need is that straightforward approach. Like Pac had that, right? He was able to grab your attention and inspire you, and grab you with his lyrics. And he was poetic, right? He was a great songwriter. Even before like he really became a big rapper, songs like Brenda's Got a Baby, that was his first album. Like, and he was already making conscious songs like that, right? Trapped off that first album, off Tupac Lives Now, like he was making social aware lyrics. And when you're trying to be social, a rapper who's trying to portray social awareness in the community, you got to be straightforward with that. You can't like beat around the bush. You can't be all clever and be witty and have these metaphors and shit when you're trying to like get people to listen to what you're saying, to really listen to what you're saying, right? So that's why I know the people that don't have Pac as high, and I've been seeing that lately. And before, Pac was on everybody's top list, right? But nowadays, I've been seeing people drop Pac off their top 5 list, and I'm not even the biggest Tupac fan, but like you can't deny the impact that he had and influence that he had. And I'm a guy that likes more like straight, bars, and being, having double entendres and metaphors and complex rhyme schemes. Like, I like that more than what Pac gave me. Like, so that's why I'm not like, I don't listen to Pac a whole lot, because he wasn't that kind of rapper. And that's, and that straightforward like approach isn't always my favorite type of rap to listen to. But like I mentioned, this is not like my personal favorites. This was like my unbiased opinion, like who I think are the greatest rappers ever, based on everything, based on impact, influence, lyrics, storytelling, longevity. Pac had the longevity as well, even though he died at a young age. He still was alive to make, like how much like Pac had a decade's worth of music that he made, and a decade's worth of music after that was unreleased after he passed away, right? And he still has 3 classic albums: Me Against the World, All Eyes on Me, The Dunk Illuminati, 7 Day Theory. Those are all classic albums. And to have 3 classic albums, only a handful of rappers can say they have more than 3, or can even say they have 3 classic albums, right? So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that I think Pac got a little disrespected. He's being a little disrespected lately when it comes on these lists, and so I had him at 4. Just based off all that I just said right now. Number 5, I had Rakim. Number 5, Rakim's impact is up there still, even though he hasn't been a big part of hip hop or a big player in the game in 20 years. He's still his first, Rakim's first 8 years of his career were just as great as anybody. Like, he stepped up lyricism to a whole new level. His impact that he had on changing the game for bars and for music. Like, he was the first dude to really make complex rhyme schemes and multi-syllabic rhyme patterns popular. He was the first dude to rap that way with these and take it from that simple kind of ABC approach to a more lyrical, complex way of writing. And you see it with like people like Nas and like Wu Tang and Jay and rappers that came after Rakim in that mid '90s era. That you can tell they're Rakim babies. Basically, everybody was trying to catch up to that level. And I know when it comes to the '80s, like the legends from the '80s, guys like Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, KRS-One, LL Cool J, like it's a little bit harder to rank them now because it's been so long since they've been relevant, since they've been a player in hip hop, been around. So it gets kind of hard to rank them. But Rakim, just based off that era, his influence was so big. He was so good. He was so far ahead of his time that he's still up there, man. I wouldn't even be mad if people put Rakim number one. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at that. His lyrics still hold up to this day. That's how if a guy from the '80s was really good. If you can, if they still hold up to this day, and Rakim still does, like his shit to this day is still amazing. So, I know he's not as big as some of the other guys I mentioned. He doesn't have that name like Jay and Nas and Biggie and Pac have, but he impacted all of those guys. The four people I have ahead of Rakim, he was a big impact on all of those guys. And when it comes to that, the top five, that's the order I have them in. But however order you want to put them, it's up to you. Like, I'm not gonna be mad if you reversed it. If you had Rakim number one and had Jay at number five, like it is what it, like as long as those guys are like the five, then I think that's a good start off point there. And just keep it going here. So after those five, I had my next five. I had Andre 3000, Eminem, Black Dot, Scarface, and KRS-One. So Andre 3000 number 6, Eminem 7, Black Dot 8, Scarface 9, KRS-One number 10. Actually, I had KRS-One 14 at first on my original post that I posted on Instagram. Then I revised it. I left a comment like I'm already revising the list, and I put KRS-One at number 10. I think before that, I forgot who I had number 10 before that. Might have been Big Daddy Kane. I had him at 11. So either way, like, I mean, Andre 3000 is again another guy that has had a big impact on the game. One of the greatest rappers ever. Nothing but classics. All of Outkast's albums are classics for the most part. I know he never made a solo album, but even without ever making a solo album, he still like has enough classic verses and classic songs with Outkast that you can place him this high on the list. And he's still very much a great rapper. Like, anytime we get a Andre 3000 verse, it's like a blessing from heaven, right? Because we got blessed with another Andre 3000 verse, right? So, not much to say there. Eminem, again, like, I have a number 7. And with M, I mean, there's a lot of love-hate now with Eminem. There's only between with Eminem anymore. Like, there's a lot of people that put Eminem number 1. There's a lot of people that don't even put Eminem in their top, top 20. Like, the Brew podcast, that's another comparison I want to make. They had Eminem at number 28. That was another, like, all-time great, where a little disrespectful. And I'm not the biggest Eminem fan either, but to have him number 28, come on, Eminem, he's still up there. And I know that, like, the last couple years. He's he's kind of, I think they haven't been too great his last couple projects, but Eminem's still up there. Black Thought number 8. Black Thought's interesting because I think if you want to just talk about pure bars and just the skill of rapping, like that, like what it takes to be a great rapper and like the actual skill set, like I think Black Thought is the most skilled rapper ever. I think Black Thought can out rap like any rapper ever. Like that's how good I think he is as an MC. I think the art of rapping and MCing and skills, like he's I don't think you can say anybody's really better than him at that. The reason he's not higher on my list is because he just, unfortunately, he doesn't have that type of impact that the rappers ahead of him do. Like everybody ahead of him inspired like a lot of rappers that came after them to want to rap like them. Like you hear like with Eminem, right? Eminem, guys like Hopsin, guys like Tyler the Creator, like you can tell like they're influenced by Eminem. You know, like Andre 3000, you hear it with like Kendrick Lamar, you hear it, and a lot of rappers, like the inspiration and the influence that Andre had. You know, obviously Nas, Biggie, J, they all had that influence too on a lot of people that came after him. Black Thought has never really like impacted the game like that, where he's really influenced a lot of rappers. He's hasn't had that type of like monumental influence on the game like that, but he's just so good that it's kind of like you gotta have him up there still, at this point, especially because Black Thought's another dude that similar to like Jay, where he's still really relevant to this day. Like Black Thought, and obviously Black Thought's never done numbers like Jay, but the roots have always been consistent. He's his projects, it was the EPs he made with like the one with Nice Wonder, Streams of Conscious. I just heard him on Benny the Butcher's EP. Like he crushes anytime any verse he's on, he crushes. So just for his pure level of rapping, his skill, and the fact that he's the longevity as well puts the Black Dot that high on my list. Then I have Scarface at 9. Scarface, from a influential standpoint, he's like the Tupac of the South, right? Like that real dude that had that storytelling, and then those like street gritty lyrics, and those hood tales, and just making that that real shit that Scarface can make you cry. He can be gangsta. Like Scarface had that a big influence on Southern hip hop. Then I KRS-One number 10. KRS-One, another guy that's kind of like Rakim, same era as Rakim, the 80s, and so it gets kind of hard to rank KRS-One nowadays because again it's been like 20 years since he's really like had music that was being looked for like that, where people were checking for KRS-One's music. It's been a long time, but again, similar to Rakim, he was very impactful, influential in his time. He influenced people like Talib Kweli, Common. He was one of the first dudes that really rapped with from an educational standpoint, and really wanted to spit knowledge and spit that real shit that's gonna be impactful to you, important to you, like KRS-One. And in his day, man, nobody wanted to battle KRS, right? He took down a whole borough, just kind of ending careers back in his day. So I had to move him up after I really thought about like what he did in his time, right? Has classic albums, has it all. Big Daddy Kane, number 11. Big Daddy Kane, basically, if it wasn't for Big Daddy Kane, there wouldn't be no Jay-Z, no Biggie, no like those dudes that were inspired by Big Daddy Kane. Big Daddy Kane used to take Jay on tour, so that whole swag, the style, the how smooth he was on the mic, that kind of calm, cool presence, but was still like can kill you lyrically and had like that slick talk, that smooth talk. You can tell Biggie and Jay, being that they're from Brooklyn, took a lot from Big Daddy Kane from Brooklyn as well. So those, and those were like the guys from the '80s that everybody always talks about: KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane, Rakim. So then number 12 here. This is where I have my first new school rapper, Kendrick Lamar. I had Kendrick at 12. So, and I know a lot of people already have him like top 10, top 5, but Will was arguing with me when he saw my list. He thought like I can maybe have Kendrick top 10. But it's tough. But again, man, I'm out of respect for the legends that came before him. You can't forget what a guy like Big Daddy Kane, KRS-One, Scarface, like to put Kendrick ahead of those guys. You can. I mean, I'm not gonna hate you if you do put Kendrick ahead of those guys. If you want to say you surpassed them already, but obviously Kendrick's his discography is already legendary. You can argue that every album he's made has been a classic album. But with Kendrick, you still want to see how his albums hold up over time, how impactful they are. Like, as good as like To Pimp a Butterfly it was, is it gonna have like that type of impact that like a Illmatic did, or that like Ready to Die did, or something like, like how much of an impact is that album gonna have in the long run? And that's why you still want to see, because for now, like, those albums are all great and all, but if people don't go back to them like that, they might start to lose a little bit of their overall value. So, but Kendrick's on his way, man. I mean, one more great album, he's for sure probably cracks my top 10. And I had Ice Cube, Cool G Rap, Big Pun. And this is where it starts to get hard. This is where it starts to get like real hard as far as how to rank people. So at this point, like, I'm just gonna go through this list and tell you these names, and we'll go about like the rankings. Yeah, like, so Ice Cube at 13, Cool G Rap at 14, Big Pun at 15. Had Ghostface at 16, Big L at 17, Lauryn Hill at 18, MF Doom at 19, Chuck D at 20. So yeah, this is where it gets tough, man. At this point, like, however you want to rank these names is up to you, man. But like me putting like Big Pun at 15, and then like, I don't know, like, this is where you can start to make that comparison and be like so this is an example here. I have Big Pun at 15 and Ghostface at 16. Like, I could have easily put, like, I put this the other way around, just depending on like my mood of the day, like at this point, as long as they're on the list, right? Big Pun, kind of a little bit similar to Biggie, where his discography isn't he didn't have the longevity like that because he passed away. So, but he was the first like Latino rapper to go platinum. Just crazy dope flow, amazing lyricist. So off Capital Punishment alone, how big that album was, how impactful that album was. He has to be up there, even though he doesn't have the discography like that. Big L is interesting too. Had Big L at 17. With Big L, he doesn't have the discography because he died so young as well. But it's interesting because Big L didn't really get bigger, no pun intended, until after he died. Like Big Pun was a platinum artist. Like, Biggie was platinum. Everybody knew he was a superstar. Big L was still actually trying to like make his break it, put his foot in the door when it came to like the mainstream part. He didn't sell a lot of records. Like, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous, as dope as an album it wasn't that big of an album. Like, people were, it wasn't like a high selling album or anything like that. So it wasn't until after Big L died where people started to like look at how crazy his bars were and his metaphors, and like, you know, that dude had you know, the slick talk for days, man. Big L was grimy, man. He was raw, so his impact kind of took a while for people to really check for Big Al, but once they did, they saw how talented he was. Um, Lauryn Hill, I had at 18. And somebody in the comment section complained about Lauryn Hill for some reason. I don't really want to get into it too much, but come on, man. Like, I know her discography isn't extensive, but like, a person in the comment section tried to argue that Lauryn Hill, who like she only inspired female rappers. Like, hell no, man. Like, Lauryn Hill, it was one of the first. Doesn't matter, male or female, it doesn't matter. She was one of the first artists to really marry both sides of like rapping and singing, and talk about love and, you know, stuff that it's not always fun to talk about, because even women weren't really talking about love like that, like before Lauryn Hill. Like, no, you know, Little Kim and Foxy Brown were talking about like relationships and being in love, and Lauryn Hill was one of the first artists to do that successfully. Like, Miseducation and Lauryn Hill, I think the album's Diamond. I think the album went 10 times platinum, I want to say. So people like Drake, man, like, if it wasn't for Lauryn Hill, you know, Drake might have not been as big. Like, you know what I mean? Like, to rap and sing and marry both sides together, talk about, you know, relationships and things like that. Like, she inspired more than just female rappers. You look at like Kanye West is another example. Kanye, I've heard it in plenty of Kanye lyrics. His admiration for Lauryn Hill, and he's name dropped her a bunch of times in songs about how impactful and important Lauryn Hill was, right? People like Common, people like Mos Def, like, you know. So Lauryn Hill is much more impactful than just female rappers. She influenced a lot of male rappers too, and she could spit, man. Like, lyrically, she was the only girl at that time that men were scared of. They didn't want to, you know, be on a record with Lauryn Hill, because Lauryn Hill can out rap just about any guy in her era, you know. So come on, man. That's when, you know, like, when you complain about having Lauryn Hill on the list or having her that high on the list, and then you don't know what you're talking about. 19, MF Doom was one of my favorite rappers ever. It's kind of hard to put MF Doom higher, because obviously he's underground. He doesn't have that type of like overall like name like that's recognizable, distinguished like that. But even for an underground rapper, MF Doom is probably the most famous underground rapper. I mean, you know, Earl Sweatshirt was like big, you know, you can tell the influence he's had on this younger generation, like Earl Sweatshirt, Tyler the Creator, even like Jay Electronica. I remember Jay Electronica sounding like, when I first heard Jay Electronica, he sounded like MF Doom a little bit too. So, and he has some underground classics, man. So I'm gonna go to this 20 through 30 range real quick. I had Chuck D at 20, Mos Def at 21, Redman 22, Common 23, LL Cool J 24, Slick Rick 25, GZA 26, Royce da 5'9" 27, Talib Kweli 28, Killer Mike 29, and then Pharoah Monch at 30. So this point it kind of became like, all right, fuck it, like, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna put these names down. I try to rearrange it in a way that, you know, I wanted to, but for the most part, it became hard to put who was ahead of who, man. Like, at this point, like, putting like Redman at 22 and like Royce da 5'9" at 27, like, you know, it's not like a big deal anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like, having Common at 23 and Talib Kweli at 28 isn't a big deal. Like you can flip flop them, whatever. Like at this point, it's just about who's on the list, right? Like, if Pharoah Monch at 30, I could have easily put Pharoah Monch like at 22 ahead of Common if I wanted to. Like it wouldn't have been a big of a deal. So this is where people started. You start complaining about the order, but the order doesn't really matter no more. It's kind of like who's on your list at this point. And 31 through 40 had Lupe Fiasco 31, Raekwon 32, MC Lyte 33, AZ at 34, Pusha T at 35, Method Man at 36, Jadakiss at 37, Prodigy at 38, Bun B at 39, Lil Wayne at 40. Again, like whatever the order is, it is what it is. It's kind of like who's on your list, and some of these people you just gotta make sure they're on your list. Doesn't really matter what order they're in. Like it is what it is. Like yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like who I had at 22 and 38 wasn't like I had a Redman at 22 and I had Prodigy at 38. Like is Redman like that much better than Prodigy? Like you can, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really matter the order anymore as long as they're on there. Then I had Lil Wayne at 40, Snoop Dogg at 41, Guru at 42, T.I. at 43, DMX 44, Kanye 45, Q-Tip 46, J. Cole 47, Busta Rhymes 48, Big Boy 49. I know originally had Rhapsody at 50, but then I felt like I gotta include some more old school people. So I had Posthumous from my gosh, from De La Soul, I'm sorry, at 50. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I get complaining about if you're complaining about who's ranked at in the 20, like who's ranked at 23 and 28, like then okay, you're being too nitpicky. But I get it if you want to say like, oh, you have somebody that's ranked 21 and then this person that's ranked 46, like that's a pretty bigger gap where you can argue like, okay, like they should be closer together. But again, it is what it is. Like I don't know, some people push back about Lil Wayne at 40, and to me, I just look at, I know Lil Wayne had a big impact. I know Lil Wayne was very, especially like in his day, very influential when he was in his prime. And then people and people argue that like, his impact was so large, right? So he should be higher. But I look at the type of people you have impacted. So it's not just about, oh, were you impactful? Were you influential? Lil Wayne was impactful and influential, but was he for the good? Like, did he impact good rappers? Did he, like? And I look at like this generation of rappers who were kids when Lil Wayne was in his prime, and I don't see a lot of, like there's not a lot of great Lil Wayne babies out there. You know what I mean? Like the same way where like you look at rappers from the 90s and then the guy that they influenced. Like people they're trying to tell me that like, oh man, like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole were big, inspired a lot by Lil Wayne, but to me those guys were more inspired by, and those guys are a little bit older. They're closer to Lil Wayne's age than these young rappers now. Like J. Cole's like 33 or something like that. Like Lil Wayne didn't play a big inspiration to him like that. You know what I mean? J. Cole was more inspired by like Tupac and Jay, and he grew up on them. Like Cannabis was a big inspiration to J. Cole, and that's another guy that I was trying to put on the list, but I just felt like people don't go back and listen to Cannabis like that anymore, so it's kind of hard to put him back. From a pure lyric standpoint, and his bars, and Cannabis was up there, but it's kind of hard to find a place for him now. But again, going back to Lil Wayne though, if you want to put him higher, that's fine. It's just like, to me, I don't think he had a really positive impact. I know he had an impact. That's not what I'm saying. He definitely was very impactful and inspired a lot of rappers to come after him. But I don't think the people he impacted are good. I think most of the people he impacted are, for the most part, kind of garbage. So like, just because you had an impact on the generation doesn't mean it was a good impact. Like, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of this mumble rap generation is a lot of kids that grew up on Lil Wayne. But you know, Lil Wayne, man, I mean, at his peak, he had a string of great mixtapes, but there's a lot of guys that had great mixtape runs. And you know, he had a lot of, obviously, platinum in 1 week and 1 day, or what was it, like 1 week, right? With the Carter 3 was huge. So at his peak, Lil Wayne was great. I felt even back then, though, he took there's a lot of stuff that was overhyped and overrated. There's things that were like, things were kind of like a lot of what should I call it? Like a lot of half-assed, or not half-assed, but a lot of filler. He still got away with a lot of filler back then. But you know, for 40, I think it's cool. I know that the Brew podcast list, I think they had him around the same range. But if you want to put Lil Wayne higher, that's fine. You know, that's no problem to me. I just kind of look at the people I had ahead of him. I just think we're just a little better at their peaks. Yeah, I mean, Kanye at 45. A lot of that is just with the old Kanye. He had his run of great albums. J. Cole 47. He can climb up that list. And yeah, I mean, I don't have Drake on here. That's probably one that's gonna stick out to people. After all, like the Ghostwriter controversy, I just don't know, Drake, what Drake wrote and what he didn't write anymore. So it's kind of hard to put Drake up there somewhere, and it is what it is. But yeah, man, I mean, and Wayne is still active, so Wayne can still go up on this list. But yeah, it is what it is. Like I mentioned, once you get into like outside of that top 10, top 15, it gets really hard to rank these people and what order you want to put them in. So yeah, I just want to talk about this list, and what do you guys think, and trying to be as objective about it as I can. Obviously, there's always going to be a little bit of like personal taste as to who you have where. Like MF Doom at 19 is probably in my top 10 most favorite rappers, but even at 19, I feel like it is showing him a little bit of favoritism, and it's kind of, I try to not have that, because MF Doom is not was an underground rapper, so it's kind of hard when it comes to underground rappers. It's kind of hard to rank them on these top 50 greatest lists, because a lot of times you want to have people that have had more of a widespread universal acclaim, right? So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I just want to talk about this since it was trending, and there's a lot of opinions about it. So yeah, let me know what you think, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Peace.